I want you to imagine this, opening up your podcast app and seeing your podcast. Yeah, wouldn't that be exciting? It would be an amazing feeling to see your face, your podcast art tile right there. Your voice is out into the world. I want you to experience that too. If your dream has been to start a podcast in 2023, I have an opportunity for you. I'm starting a podcast bootcamp from idea to launch on February 1st. The cart is open starting January 2nd through January 23rd. And I'm inviting you to come and join us and a hand-picked group of people who want to launch their podcast in 2023 and expand and experience what it's like to reach more people through the power of podcasting. If this is you, I want you to sign up today. There are limited opportunities in the small bootcamp group coaching course. So go ahead, sign up on the form below. I'll post a link in the show notes. And I look forward to hearing your heart, your vision, and your purpose for this upcoming podcast. Welcome to Wholistic Podcasting. I'm your host and producer, Kristin Chadwick. After being in the podcast industry since 2016, I am determined to inspire you to start, grow, and maintain your podcast through a holistic approach. If you're an entrepreneur, coach, author, or leader, you need a podcast. And friend, I'm here for you as an experienced podcast coach for over 6 years, working with numerous top podcasts and hosts. Your voice needs to be heard and your story needs to be known. Through Wholistic Podcasting, you will learn how to market your business coming from an aligned and centered place and through intentional strategy. Thanks for listening to the show. Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Wholistic Podcasting. I am your host, Kristin Chadwick, and today I am going to be doing an episode kind of piggybacking off of one of my most downloaded episodes in Wholistic Podcasting in 2022 was Start with Why. And I want to just piggyback on that, like I said, and follow that up with how do you find your why? Because I think that finding your why is going to be foundational in starting and growing your podcast. So this is for podcasters today that are thinking about starting a podcast, because this is like when you think about your why, it's like when you drive by those construction sites for businesses and you see there's that inner stairwell that's being built. That's the very first thing that's being built. And this is what the why is. That's your center. That's your foundation. That is the core of your podcast. This is also for podcasters who have been doing this a long time and they need to reevaluate and really hone in and anchor into the meat, the mission, the purpose of your podcast. So whether you have not yet pressed record or you're about to press record or you're 6 months into recording, this episode is for you. We've all heard when we are, starting a health goal, when we start working out, we have to know our why, right? Because that motivation is going to start to wane. We can be gung-ho on day 1, day 2, day 3, and then day 4 comes around, we're really sore, we're tired, our motivation starts to tank, right? And this is similar with podcasters. Podcasters are, when you first start, you might be a little bit scared, and then you get excited because you're about to launch. And then as the process goes, you're like, dang, I'm episode 1, 2, 3, 4. I love doing this. And then about episode 20, 25, there tends to be a little dip in motivation. And when we can hone in on why are you doing this podcast, it's going to be so helpful to remember, to continue to put in the work, to do the steps that we need to do and to serve our listeners, our potential clients even better. So I want to just give you this quote from Simon Sinek. He says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And for me, when people are coming to me for podcast coaching, they ultimately are coming to me because of my why. I love doing what I do. My mission in life is to empower other people to use their greatest gift to impact the world. That's the broadest term, right? I love being able to ignite a passion with someone, alongside someone, to use their voice and really believe in themselves that it can make a difference. And I'm not just another podcast manager doing a job. There's plenty of people out there on the internet who are podcast managers. It's very transaction, and I'm all about transformation as your coach. And I genuinely care about my clients. So whether they're podcast coaching clients or a podcast management client, my client knows my why is I believe in you, and I believe that your voice matters. We as consumers are super intelligent, right? We can always sense when someone is doing things out of selfish gain or ulterior motives, or I just think of like the car salesman. Their why is very obvious of, I need a paycheck and you are the reason I'm here, is you're purely a part of my commissions, right? It's very clear of their why. I would say most car salesmen. So as you're creating your podcast, this has to be a part of your filter with which you're going to pour out to your listeners, right? How do we find our why? Our why can be found through a few ways. And I want to just come in here real quick and say, if you are thinking about starting a podcast, I am launching a boot camp starting February 1st. It's going to be a 9-week course where we are going to go after things like this very topic. We are going to hit it hard. You're going to get coaching from me. We're going to really dig into each of these things that you can uncover your why, and it's going to really set you up well for your podcast in the future. So just to put that bug in your ear, that if you don't want to start a podcast alone, please don't. Please come with us, come alongside this group of very powerful people as we launch podcasts into the world by the end of Q1. So that opportunity is there. And we will dig into much, much more of finding your why and values and what we're going to talk about today. All right. So how can you find your why? Well, number one, like I just said, values. First, we have to discover ourselves and what we value. So a list of values could be connections, achievement, impact, leadership, growth. Those are some right there. You can find a whole list of values. And actually next week, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into values because I find it so important in how you're going to set up your podcast. Because if your values are family, then it's really important for you to make the most out of your podcast and create an income to where you're not always behind the desk all day long, 9 to 5, right? We want to make an impact, and we want to make an impact strategically and leveraging our podcast to the best that we can, right? So that's going to be super important. So stay tuned for next week and the whole more in-depth conversation on values. But I also want to share a story here too. One of my clients, she started a podcast back in the beginning of 2020, and she really values achievement. She wanted to grow her business to a high figure business and impact other women in her industry for the better. And she wanted to grow more in depth in her values with every episode, right? So she was very intentional. She knew exactly where she wanted to head, and she knew her values, right? And so it set the tone for her podcast to be a very pivotal podcast and impactful podcast. Okay. So I'll dive more into values on the next episode, but just know that they are pivotal in setting the tone for your podcast. Okay. All right. The second way that we find our why is through the stories that have impacted us. We find that as humans, we really connect through story. And you'll find a lot of podcasters start with a story because they know that we really connect heart to heart with people when we hear their vulnerability, we hear their journey, we hear how they have conquered through things. If you think about Donald Miller, he has the famous book of Story Brand, which is all about the hero, the heroine, the having the problem and a solution, a guide along the way. All of those, it's very much ingrained in our human brain of the impact of stories. And why I bring that up in the finding your why is because there is a story that has impacted you. Either you have lived through it or you have experienced it. So I want you to think about maybe you're a health coach, and the reason why you started as a health coach is because you have walked a very long journey through poor health. Maybe you had an illness that triggered autoimmune, or you've been to doctor, not knowing what it was. They didn't know what it was, and you've tried everything. And now that you found this product or this way of living or this way of healing, you want to share that with others. And so that is a story that's impacting your why. So when you start a podcast, then you can look back on, okay, my why is I want to bring freedom to people who feel alone, unheard, unseen, and they want to experience wellness, right? So that's an example of a why. Another real life story is I have a client who has done incredibly deep heart work to heal. And she just launched a podcast this last fall. And her podcast episodes are all woven. There's through, like each podcast has a thread woven through it of her own journey, her own story, and how she held space for her own healing. And now she's holding space for others to walk through grief, pain, and transformation. And that is her why, is she wants to bring healing. She wants to hold space for other people who are doing the same thing. Okay, number 3, what's the third way of finding your way, or finding your why? Your third way is thinking about the long game, your legacy, which is going to come out of your mission, which is going to come out of your identity. And we discover our why through the power of knowing who we are, what we're called to do in life, and knowing that long-term picture. And it's a process. And it's one of the best things to work with a coach. So whether you work with me, you find another life coach, a kingdom life coach, a business coach, ask these questions and really go deep with yourself. Prayerfully ask these questions of who am I? What am I called to do? What's my purpose? And I want to share personally a story for you, one that really started in 2013. I really started asking the question of who am I? And without going into a very long story, basically I discovered that one of the ways that God continually spoke over and over to my heart was that I was his peacock. And that's why you will see in the video version of these is a bunch of peacock things everywhere. And it's a reminder of I am proudly his, and I can display his colors, the colors that he's created me to display. And that was my first journey on really knowing my identity. And then working with a coach, I really honed in on my mission, which was to empower others, right? Ultimately, that was if I narrowed it down to about 3 words, that's about it. I do have a very long version that continues to come up and evolve and change and go through, and that's just part of the process. And then the third thing is my legacy. So if you think in your own family, what are those things that you want to continue to live on? And maybe there's some things in your family you don't want to, but those are the areas that I truly believe God wants to heal and to pass on generation to generation. And so for me, when I look at my own story, my dad was in broadcasting. Never did I ever think that I actually was going to work in broadcasting. And, 2015, that totally changed in my world. And I did step into his legacy. He built a very well-known broadcast company. And he was one of the top people to head this company. He didn't do it alone. He definitely had a team. But he was a pivotal figure. And to me, that's what I get to carry on. He no longer is here. He passed away in 2015. And part of my legacy is building and creating a space for other people to broadcast their voice, their talents, the gifts that God's given them into this world. And that's part of my legacy. That's part of why I do this exact podcast. It's why I do my business. It's why I coach my clients, and why I am so passionate about you sharing your voice. Okay, so think about that in your own world. What are those legacies being passed on? What is the mission that you're on, the purpose that you're here, the purpose of your podcast? Because that is super important. I want to caveat too, this little disclaimer, because finding your why is not supposed to be overwhelming. It's a curiosity journey. Keep it light. It's like one of my good friends had this example one time when talking about identity. He said, sometimes we only get pieces of the puzzle, right? We get, oh, this goes with this, and this goes with this. Oh, that totally makes sense. This whole section connects with this section. And when we discover our identity and our purpose, it's like seeing the front of the box of a puzzle. You kind of see it all put together. And that's what we're doing here, is we are coming alongside. We're seeing the picture, most of the picture, right? We won't ever know the full picture, but we get to put the puzzle pieces together. And it's an enjoyable process. I think sometimes we can get so bogged down in the I have to get it right, or what if I'm wrong? And I don't believe that at all. I think it's all a part of this journey. And if we look at it through curiosity eyes, then it makes it more fun. So whether you are starting a podcast or you're growing a podcast, finding your why is going to help you have tremendous clarity. And that's the whole purpose of this. Finding your why is that you want to bring clarity. You want to make sure that you are in the zone that you're called to. If you're a health coach, like that example that I gave, where your why is you are bringing freedom to women who have felt unseen and unheard, maybe in the medical field, and yet you have found a certain area of wellness that has been helpful for you. Well, if you know that that is your passion, that is where you're really called to serve, then you know, and you're very clear that you're not going to go start a membership about, let's see, making necklaces. You know what I mean? Like you're going to be very clear on your funnel and your tunnel vision for your podcast so that you're not all over the map. And it's very clear and very intentional and very purposeful. All right. So we will cover more of your why in that upcoming podcast bootcamp course. So make sure you sign up below, because it's going to start February 1st. It's just a few weeks away and the cart is open. So start off on the right foot in your podcast. It's going to save you so much time and so much energy and give you so much more focus so that you can fully charge full throttle ahead. All right, take care, you guys, and I will see you soon. Thanks for listening to Wholistic Podcasting. I want you to know that I truly value every listen. To show my appreciation, I offer a one-on-one free podcast consultation call. Whether you're wanting to start a podcast or you're ready to take your podcast to a whole nother level, come sign up. The link is below, down in the show notes. Have a great day.